fantastic to see everybody here. What a great time to be talking about broadband. What a great group of people to be getting together talking about broadband. I've seen tremendous energy from Kitsap, from Mason, now Jefferson and Fallon. All these communities really coming together and doing some fantastic work in the broadband space. So this may just be a reiteration of some of the things that were already going on, but it'll also help us spark some more of those conversations that need to be had at a time where it is very critical to be having these conversations. Never seen more energy around this topic. We've never seen more money coming down to this topic. So it's exciting to be here. Again, I'm Russ Elliott. I'm the director of the Washington State Broadband Office. So again, just happy to be here. And I'm going to run you through a quick dog and pony there. You've probably seen it, so you can take a nap. But the rest of you guys, that haven't seen it, let's run through what the Broadband Office is doing and why that's important right now for all of us, and how we're trying to make certain we're centralizing the conversation across this state. So let me see. Just give me a head nod if that looks like it's a screen share success. All right, fantastic, good. Well, thank you all for letting me be here. Broadband Office, we're here. We were founded in 2019, as you all know. Legislation stood us up, put a little money aside for some capital, and set some standards for the state. So as a result of that, it set up this office and set up my role. I was brought back here in late 2019. Been here about a year and a half. And the State Broadband Office, I'm proud to say, has been operating out of the basement of my house in Shelton, Washington. So there you have it. That's the State Broadband Office. It's been primarily here in this community. So a little rural here in Mason County, but proud to say the Broadband Office is representing from this region. So here we are. The Broadband Office, I'm appointed by the governor, so I sit underneath the governor, but I also sit with Commerce, and they do a lot of the support for this office. We were an office of 1.5 for the last year and a half since inception, basically. We had about $250,000 budget, and we're the dog that caught the bus this last session. We went out and told a story. People believe that broadband is more critical than ever, and as a result, they threw money at me. And we've got a few hundred million. We've got, to be exact, around $350 million to spend on broadband. Some of that for matching funds, some of that for capital grant projects and those kind of things. So we're excited about the opportunity to finally have some influence in this space. Commerce, as really as the support mechanism for us, and we're excited to be with the support of Commerce. And this is the Commerce commercial. It's part of my show. Here's the challenge, and I think you all know this. Over here on the left-hand side, big broadband, lots of providers, lots of return on investment, lots of people. Right? There's a lot of things going on over there. So we have tremendous amount of activity, a tremendous amount of options and pricing and services. That's happening as long as we've got good demand. As demand wanes and population wanes, so does the interest from the providers, and so does that return on investment, that opportunity to make a little bit of money, right? And as that starts to wane, and it happens fast, it's not just downtown Seattle, and then all of a sudden you got to get all the way out into deep East Snohomish County. This is I-5, and about 2 miles off I-5 is where you start to get in this beige area right here. And when you get into that area, it starts to become less attractive because it's a little bit more expensive to build, less adoption out there, and a little bit more of a challenge for return on investment. And so hence the competition goes away. You start to see single types of providers. Then there's a point really where we start to get out in more rural areas. And again, that's not very far out of that suburban area, but these areas out where it really is very costly, it's very costly to build, and there's less demand out there. So there's less opportunity for adoption, less opportunity for revenue. And really this becomes a challenge because it's very expensive to put infrastructure in the ground. So as we're talking about regional transportation, which I love this conversation, as you're digging up roads, as you're putting in bridges, as you're doing the things that you do around your transportation efforts, think communications as well. Think about, if I put a bridge over some water, I've got a piece of conduit in that bad boy so that people can come in post bridge and run some fiber through that. 90% of the cost of doing broadband is putting a plow in the ground or putting string up on the poles, right? So if we can get past that with some economies of scale and scope, what a fantastic time we can have. And that was embraced by the legislation this year also with 1457, where they talked about Department of Transportation, Broadband Office, let's work together, let's centralize the conversation, let's coordinate a little bit. We've got projects out there 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 6 years. let's make certain we're letting everybody know where we're going, what's going on. Maybe providers are coming in. Maybe now with the new municipal efforts and the new public networks that are going on and that passed in this last session, maybe it's a municipal play. Maybe it's one of the public utility districts. Who is it? Who knows? But what we have to do is make certain we're coordinating that conversation and not participating in our silos, because this is a challenge. It doesn't matter. I don't care if it's public infrastructure. I don't care if it's private infrastructure. I don't care what it is. This is a challenge. And this is the delicate conversation this office is trying to lead this state right now. How do we get this area taken care of? Along with, you'll see some digital equity stuff where we talk about affordability. It's not, it's not enough to just build it. People have to be able to afford it too. Here's our strategy as a broadband office. We really believe that broadband now is a community up discussion. It's been led by providers for decades. Providers have done what they can. They've built infrastructure where they feel there's that return on investment. They're at a point now where they're looking for support. They're trying to figure out how to make that happen. And you know what? In Washington State, we've been pretty lucky. We've had good providers. We rank in the top 3 in the country for connectivity. It's because we have good private investment. So we can't just throw that away. We have to honor that, along with honoring the opportunity for us to now bring some of that public infrastructure and public investment to this conversation. So we have to start at the local level. We have to start with the community, the partner, the planning, the stakeholdering. And that's where we embrace as a state these broadband action teams. We see these regional teams all over, and I'm certain many of you in here are familiar with the ones that are going on. We got them up in Jefferson, got them in Clallam. We've got one trying to form here in Mason. We've got them all over the state. As a matter of fact, we're up over 32 now. So we've got these local communities coming together, and they're bringing providers to the conversation, public infrastructure to the conversation. They're bringing anchor institutions, medical facilities, schools, the people that are going to make the big difference in how we're going to do this, economic developers and the citizens. Bring them all together, start to have a hearty conversation, start to be able to talk more intelligently about what it is you need. We get too many people out there saying, we need more money for broadband. Well, what are you going to do with it, right? We need to identify exactly what we're going to do with it. And now's the time, because we're getting a lot of money coming down the pipe. We want to be able to say, here's what we want to spend our money on. Here are the areas we have identified that are challenging for this state. So after we get the partnering, we start the planning. Once everybody's together, we start talking about what's the plan look like? Where are those gaps in our counties? The broadband office has stood up a new mapping tool that's pretty compelling, allows us to break down this state by county, by legislative district, by tribal region, whatever it is. We can look at it. People have given us speed test results. We can talk intelligently about the type of technology that's there. We can talk about the providers that are there. We can talk about the holes that need to be filled. We can also talk about where federal money is already spent. A lot of the money coming down the pipe will not double spend. It's not going to spend on top of additional or existing federal infrastructure committed areas. So we have to be ready to look at that and say, oh, there's already money spent here. How can we enhance that fund and maybe bring these two areas together and fill in this blank right here? That's a good spend of our money, because we're really taking advantage of identifying, where those gaps are and where those projects could be. So planning, partnering, planning, then we go chase the funds, right? We've always been an office that's dedicated on trying to go out and get as much of the federal money as possible. Before we knew COVID money was coming, this was our mantra. We were going to go chase federal money. We're going to go get USDA. We're going to go get EDA. We're going to go with FCC. We're going to go chase money, NTIA, Treasury money now. So we're going to go get money. We're going to try to maximize funds. What we want to do is maximize those federal dollars along with a lot of the state dollars that we have, and really get a good return on those monies that we have here locally. So we're going to be chasing money. No project goes unconsidered. I don't want to play this game of competitive projects and who can beat who, or who knows how to write a grant better than the next guy, or who didn't cross a T or dot an I or get a letter of support in, you're automatically out. I think that's a dangerous game to play when you're talking about these rural communities that need support. We need to be more nurturing and collaborative in our approach. So this office will support that. We're going to support that every project that comes in here, we have to consider it. Now, do we consider it with state funds? Do we consider it with federal money? Do we go out to the bond market? What are we going to do for it? But we're going to figure those things out, and we're going to continue to embrace all that come in and see what we can make certain we do that. We have to build networks that are future-proof, scalable, and sustainable. I can't say this loud enough. And currently I am at the federal level, really making a lot of noise about this. I'm very passionate about the fact that we are getting ready to spend my 6-year-old's future money. And he will be paying this back in 15 to 20 years. And when he's paying it back, he best be singing our praises about the beautiful infrastructure we put in that he's able to use and scale when he's sitting there trying to pay his bills through the bank and connect with his job or connect with the healthcare or education. This infrastructure better be there, and it better be solid and scalable. We better not be selfish with this money and build crummy infrastructure that's only going to last 5 to 10 years. We're done with that. We've been doing that as a country for the last 2 decades. We've built infrastructure that just gets us by. Then all of a sudden, at the end of that funding cycle, we realize, wow, that's out of date. We can't use that anymore. We need to lift in place. It's just bad policy. The policy now needs to be future-proof, scalable infrastructure. And people will push back and they'll say, boy, that's just expensive. Well, I contend we have to reevaluate what's expensive. When the federal government is talking about B's and T's coming out to our states and out to this nation, what is expensive? I think we have one time to get this right, and the time is now. So we're really going to embrace that philosophy, and we're going to go chase this, and we're going to make certain that we're building this sustainable, future-proof infrastructure networks. Then finally, and probably most importantly, especially through the pandemic, we've realized that digital equity and inclusion is such a critical component. I've always been this Navy SEAL for connectivity. I grab the fiber, I run it up the beach, I plug it in, I run back and go find a new place to put in fiber. But what we've realized very quickly is there's a need that once you plug that fiber in, can those folks afford it? Can they adopt it? Do they have the tools to use it? Do they have the skills to use it? It's as critical as getting it to them. So we are embracing this idea that digital equity and inclusion is basically the lighthouse light on everything we do to ensure that we embrace that. And again, that's at the community level, right? That's why this falls into this partner strategy, because what's right for Yakima County and migrant farm workers is different than what's right for downtown King County and our urban regions, right? And we have to build programs and plans that are customized to our unique needs in our regions. So again, we embrace this community up for connectivity, construction, and digital equity and inclusion, right? So this is kind of our model. We kind of built everything around this. Talked about broadband action teams. When I got into this office, we had about 10. Again, I always need to say that broadband action teams were an idea that came from Washington State University and their extension. We adopted that, and we've taken that to the next level. As a state, we've come to an agreement with WSU to embrace that. And we've gone from there was about 9, 10 teams when I came into the state. We've got now 32, and they are all very, very active. And they're very much working toward identifying those shovel-ready projects, bringing communities together, bringing the anchor institutions in to have the conversation. Do not let your small rural communities let their anchor institutions go to a provider without that provider committing to serving citizens around that anchor institution. That ship sailed. Providers have made a living out of coming in and grabbing those anchor institutions and getting the hell out of town and not taking care of the citizens. And what did we just have? We had a pandemic where all our schools were well connected, but empty. And all our students were sitting at home going, how do I connect? What do I got to do? Those bills kept getting paid. Those providers made good money over the last year and a half, and the schools were basically empty. And we had kids that were struggling to get connected. We need to rethink our strategies. If we're going to hand out any kind of state money, any kind of federal money to a good, solid anchor program, let's make certain that those anchors are tied to a plan to build around. Let's make certain we're doing that. That's a good planning, regional planning thought, right? Let's put that in our toolbox as we start to talk about what are we going to do for regional planning. Anyway, a lot of public-private partnership stuff. People say private's the right way. People say public's the right way. They're both wrong, right? There is something here that comes together that will solve this problem, right? Hey, if private providers agree to buy 100% or commit to 100% of infrastructure built to every citizen in the state without taxpayer dollars, bring affordable infrastructure that's scalable, future-proof, and has a income-based plan attached to it, we're out. I'm not working anymore. We're good, but that's not going to happen. We need to make certain we're 100% equitable in our pursuit for getting people connectivity. Public providers aren't going to be able to build infrastructure, maintain them, and operate them like they're telco companies. Just doesn't make sense. There's too many of these that have gone south, and then those networks end up getting absorbed by the private providers for pennies on the dollar. We have to be smart. somewhere in the middle is the play. And we're doing that delicate dance right now in this office. We are talking with public and privates together, having very unique conversations, and hopefully we'll get some magic sauce that we'll be able to sprinkle on this and really start to do some good work. I'm feeling very confident that we've got some good initial programs underway. These bats really help us identify those shovel-ready projects and look for those funding opportunities is what they do. So if you're not, get active in one of these broadband action teams. They're very forward-thinking, and they're very good partners to be engaged with. One of the things I did immediately when I got to the state is, I think we have to quantify things, and you'll see my last slide says, what gets measured gets done. I believe that 100%. I think I stole that from Henny Ford, but I believe that 100%. We can't sit back and say, I've got crappy broadband because I can't quantify that, right? What I have to do is quantify the fact that if you don't feel like your broadband is adequate, you go home and you do a speed test and you give me that information so that I can now quantify what you have. Oh, crummy or bad broadband in your neighborhood is 5 megabits download by less than 1 megabit upload. You're right. You have poor broadband. I can now speak intelligently about what you have. I know who your provider is. I know how much you're paying for it. I know what your technology is, and I know what we got to do to fix it, right? So now we have to have those conversations. Do I bring a private in to make certain we can start building that future-proof scalable infrastructure in the neighborhood? Do we look at a public infrastructure to do that, where we can build and then allow for privates to compete on it? Do we let publics come in and build it and do it themselves? All sorts of opportunities here, but we have to start with the right question, and we have to start with the right problem so that we can answer it with the right tools. So the map is here, broadband.wa.gov. If anybody says, I hate my broadband is poor, you tell them you got homework. You go home, go to broadband.wa.gov, take a speed test, make certain your voice is heard. You hear communities all the time going, wow, our neighborhood is just terrible. Well, you know what? I've empowered those communities now to have a voice in this conversation. And those communities now are being very active. And it's very compelling when you drill down on these areas. And you can see a community came in with a tremendous amount of speed tests. And I can now say, wow, this is a community I need to solve a problem for. This is not a one-off. Now, this is not somebody with a bad wireless router, right? An internal network. This is an actual community that has infrastructure that's inferior. And what are we going to do to fix it? Think of blackout bingo for those of you that play bingo. I used to have the daubers and I'd have bags and I used to play back in the old days, that kind of stuff. So think about that. And the state is our bingo card. I want to start to look at blacking out the state with regard to getting areas covered. So green is good. We'll call it green out bingo, I guess, instead of blackout bingo. We want to turn the whole state green is what we want to do. So we want to really build that infrastructure, build those networks where we start to see results. So broadband.wa.gov, please. Our map allows me to look at layers, right? So this is the other thing I can do on the back end. This is fiber. See that blue stuff there? Fiber. So you see areas where there's red, a lot of red, yellow, black, bad, right? But all of a sudden I see some blue fiber in these areas. So I can go now to those companies and say, hey, I see you have some fiber infrastructure nearby. What would it take for you to extend to a little neighborhood? You can see this big red ball out here, right? What would it take for this fiber, whoever owns this fiber, don't know who it is right now, I'm not looking at it, or this fiber here that went through here. What do I have to do to get that fiber extended up in there so that we can get some scalable infrastructure? Who is it? Are you private? Are you public? Who are you? Let's come to the table. Let's start having some creative conversation. And if they say, we just can't afford it, I say, yeah, you can. You need to come talk to me now because we got billions and trillions, right? We got money coming. So let's not think we can't afford it anymore. That's not an excuse. We're removing all the excuses, right? We've identified the barriers. The barriers are, I don't have the skills to figure out what to do. I don't have the matching funds to meet it. I don't have the grant writer to write it. This office is replacing we're putting a metric in for all of those things. So if you have any problems, we've got the tools now. We're bringing those tools. So we've removed the barriers and we're trying to make things work for everybody. So this is how we do this. And this is what we do on the back end. And this is how we start to solve problems in areas. Shovel-ready projects, already kind of talked about that, where we have to plan, we have to demonstrate unserved, we have to look at that. Right now, a lot of people focused on that 25.3 number, 25 megabits down, 3 megabits up is unserved. We're pushing hard to change that. We've got goals that are pretty unique in this state. As a matter of fact, we have the most aggressive goal in the country. I'm proud of that. Wasn't my idea. I just get to be the steward of it. 150 megabits symmetrical. That means we're going to have 150 megabits down and 150 megabits up. Shooting for 2028. Moonshot goal, no question. Moonshot goal. But I'd rather be shooting for something like that than trying to shoot for something that when we get there, hey, we need to start over again because we didn't quite get there. When this legislation was first stood up, And I think there's a slide that's coming up. I'll show you a little bit more about that. But there was some lack of thought around consistency of how we're going to get to 150 symmetrical. We're changing that dynamic. We're going straight at it. So you're going to start to see unserved being defined more in the 100 megabit. So now all of a sudden it really opens the state up for conversation. So you'll start to see some of that. Try to find those committed partners. We're looking at everybody. Like I said, you're looking at publics, you're looking at privates, you're looking at municipalities, whatever you can to get things going and start to talk about what those partnerships are like. We're starting to put plans together, costs, making certain that we've got all the things that needed to put together a good project for consideration. We have to remember right now, this is a planning group, so you guys all are familiar with. There's a lot of things when you're planning. We got to build a strategic plan. We got to do this and that. But you also have to remember you got to get materials, right? You got to have a materials list, and I think we're all very aware of what's going on right now. We're going to have a tremendous shortage of materials, especially in the broadband space. Conduit, electronics, glass, fiber, right? That's already a year out. I've got these ARPA funds. I got to spend them by 12 of 24. All of a sudden, our window's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We think we got all this time, right? But we've got these real tight constraints that are going to be happening around those funds. So it's imperative that we get together and start moving on these projects right now. Right-of-way stuff is critical. Permits are critical. Those kind of things we have to be talking collaboratively. We have to be thinking unselfishly about trying to solve the problem for the citizens of the state. Not how do I make a couple extra bucks, right? How do I solve the problem for the citizens of the state? Classic challenge, right? Small communities looking at it going, hey, right of way, I can make a bunch of money here, right? What that does is it just makes people walk away from that problem and just say, you know what, I don't have time to do that. I've got other areas I want to look at. They're going to be more lucrative for me or less onerous for me to get into. So thinking about that as we're doing. Funds, I've talked about it. I don't need to go here much more. I mean, there's so much money out there right now. NTIA's is right now with an open funding cycle for this rural grants, for broadband grants. Also, NTIA's opened $1 billion fund for tribal broadband grants. Those are both open right now. We're working as a state to try to centralize that. NTIA does a great job of looking to states to say, look, start to centralize this so we don't have these isolated silo issues going on. People working in different camps and all this kind of stuff. Work as a state, work as a cohesive unit to solve the problem. That's the only way it's going to get done. So NTIA looks to us to guide that. You'll see an RFI come out from this office here in the next week or so to where we're announcing, hey, bring your projects because we're going to pick the best ones based on what the NTIA is looking for in their NOFO. So if you're interested in that, go to the NTIA website. There's a NOFO out right now that talks about what qualifies and how does that work. Looking for serving unserved, and they're looking at a lot of last mile. So we want to hook up the citizens now, right? It's not about anchor institutions, a little bit of middle mile, but more just trying to hook up those people that are still desperate to get. So you'll see that. You'll see, obviously the ARPA money's out there. There's another big capital budget being discussed right now, whether it's the Bridge Act or Clyburn's Act on the congressional level. It's going to bring capital funds to broadband infrastructure to the tune of very significant numbers, right? Kind of going down because we're having some big lobby wrestling with the feds, and it bums me out because they're fighting about the wrong problem, right? They're not fighting about how do we solve the problem for the people. They're fighting about how do we protect our interests and our networks and our things. They're not talking about the right problem. So a little bummed out about that because we're seeing some of that money get chipped away already because they're trying to come to more of a consensus. So anyway, you'll see that USDA is going to pop here pretty soon. They'll have, $750 million out for funding. FCC will be doing a bunch of funding. There's all sorts of just different funds out there right now. So just trying to keep an eye on it along with our state programs. My office got some money. PWB's got some money. CURB's got some money. We're all got money around broadband. We're trying to centralize that here locally as well in the state. This is the thing I was talking about. So the goal that was set up in the original legislation says, hey, 25.3 to everybody by 2024, and then 150 symmetrical by 2028. Well, 25.3 actually is legacy infrastructure. So if we're pushing for 25.3 by 2024, we're actually doing a disservice to our ability to go and get that more aggressive goal in 2028. So I've kind of forgetting about that 25.3 thing, and I'm really focused on trying to build that future-proof infrastructure. And we're really working to try to make it out that way. Now, that doesn't mean we let people go stranded because they don't have a solution that's 150 symmetrical. It just means we're really trying to make people have a more compelling conversation around how we're going to build the structure. We will stay technologically agnostic, This office is set up with emerging technologies. We've run some of the most compelling programs in the country. SpaceX was first launched here in the state. We did the first proof of concept for them, which wound up making them capable and qualify for their Rural Development Opportunity Fund. At the federal level, they were able to go chase $1 billion because they proved concept with the whole tribe out in Jefferson County. Right? We went out there, we hooked up every tribal member from no connectivity to 100 megs overnight. And it was a compelling technology. It's good technology. Now, I'd still like to see them get some physical infrastructure. I'd like to see the investment in the ground in Washington State. But that is something when we need something, if there's nothing else that's available at the time. So we'll continue to look at those emerging technologies. And about digital equity inclusion, we've already talked about it. So it's not just having the access to, it's the affordability component of it. It's the skills training, and it's the tools, having the tools, and that's all those things came to a head during this pandemic. And really, we're starting to run with that. You're seeing a lot of legislative efforts around what are we going to do around affordability. Currently, the feds, and I think this is very important to reiterate, at the FCC, they've launched this emergency broadband benefit, which is a subsidy for those that can show income-based need. They are able to receive a $50 a month stipend, or 1973 wants their stipend back, whatever. They get a subsidy for their monthly bills, $50, and if they're on tribal land, they get $75 for the monthly bills. So, in my opinion, fantastic program, solved by the right people. Take it at the federal level, solve it at the federal level. Quit making us states hammer at our little tiny budgets to try to figure out how to solve this for the many people that need it, that it's critical for. I'm begging the feds to maintain the consistency of this program after the funding runs out. I'd like them to really consider some sustainable program around this benefit. There's been a lifeline benefit like $9 or something like that, but again, built on the 96 Telecom Act. That's so 10 years, 20, 30 years ago, whatever that is. It's time that we bring everything up to today, talk about 2021 and forward, and get a benefit, get a subsidy in place so that people can have the digital type technologies they need to serve in this day and age. So we'll be playing in that space. This is how we measure. We look at our map. You give me an area. This is Snohomish County. I have a little air park up there that was struggling, and they came and they demonstrated significant lead. I was able to go out and advocate for them. We had some public folks coming, we had some private folks coming. They talked about owning it themselves. In the end, I had a private provider come in and step up and say, we'll build it all on our own dime. So this is the way we measure success. You go from having very poor connectivity to actually being very well connected, all green dots. That's success. That's what we're going to do. Again, green out bingo, I guess. I'm changing it now. It's not going to be blackout, it's going to be green out bingo. I've already said this, please, broadband.wa.gov. If you got the opportunity, you got communities that say we're struggling, get them to get me some information so that I can talk about it, champion for them. And this also helps you as counties and as regional planning groups to sit down and look at this and say, okay, where do we have gaps in service? Where are there already federal funds? How do we find areas that we can go chase to get shovel-ready money? How do we take advantage of this federal money? This is how we do it. We really take advantage of this mapping initiative we have. So I think that's it. There, you've seen that. I've already said that too. So that's me. I appreciate the time and happy to take some questions and thoughts and whatever else if that's appropriate now.
Lindsay?
Hi, Russ. You're speaking to a bunch of different kinds of local governments, counties, cities, ports, tribes, transit agencies. What do you see as the appropriate role of each different kind of local government in the work you're doing around broadband?
The biggest thing you guys can do, Lindsay, is be part of the planning, be part of the coordinating the conversation. That's what needs to happen right now. And in that conversation, it needs to be, do you have assets? Do you have right-of-way capabilities? What are the things that you do have as a local government that you can contribute to making that problem go away or making that problem easier to solve? I believe it's more in the role of coordinating, centralizing, and collaborating.
Sorry, that's kind of a generic answer. We're already doing that. I mean, like specifically, telecommute, like the PUDs and those who run electric. What's their role relative to the economic development, local governments relative to the county?
Well, Lindsay, I'm sorry you thought that was a generic answer. I'm going to tell you right now that the PUDs are already engaged. Talk to Mason 3. talk to Kitsap. They're doing great work. It's old news. They're going to continue to do that good work, and we'll continue to support them. So that's what I see needs to happen there. And if we have municipalities that want to get in the game, feel free. We've got Anacortes up there running a municipal network that's closed network. It's not open access. It's closed. So the sky's the limit. I think it's just a matter of coming to the table with some creative thought and getting ready to start to solve the problem. I mean, Kitsap is doing a great job with their local utility districts. I embrace that. What else can we do? What other things can we do to solve the problem? Do we have all the answers? No, we don't. If we did, it would be already solved. I work with other states right now that everybody's going through this. Okay, how do we solve this problem? Many states don't have the public infrastructure component. So we actually have an extra tool in our toolbox to leverage. We've got to get creative with it because it's not something that's nationally embraced yet. So we have to get creative and try to come to the table with some answers. So sorry if I'm sounding generic, but I'm certainly feeling like we just need to try to centralize this conversation, get more pointed to bringing those shovel-ready opportunities to the table. What shovel-ready projects are out there that we can start to look at and get done?
Mr. Stern.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Russ, excellent presentation. Really appreciate your enthusiasm on the subject too.
Thank you, Ed.
I have a question, but I want to predecess it by saying I wince when I hear you say a 12/24 deadline, not that you control it, because the flood of money, not only here, but nationwide, there's going to be a supply chain problem like you can't believe. We discussed it at Public Works Board yesterday about extensions to the cycle, because there's not going to be enough material to get everything done, even in a 12/24, but let's save that. This is a unique moment in time. There could be even more money in an infrastructure bill that they're debating. This will never happen again like this. How do you see ensuring, just in terms of selfishly, the state of Washington, how do we make sure State Broadband Office, Public Works Board, and CURB, which all have legislative authority in this arena, coordinate, for God's sake? And how much more complicated did it get this week with HB 1330 made preeminent in the courts?
Thanks, Ed. Good, nice softballs. Thank you. I've been going all along with 1336 is probably going to be the answer. In the end, 5383 was going to head down that pathway to where there was going to be unrestricted access. So I've kind of said, let's just act as if, and lo and behold, look what's going on. So remove that barrier, remove that excuse. We now have, an open game. And to Lindsay's point earlier, there's a new tool in our toolbox. What are we going to do as a municipal? I'm talking to Jefferson PUD right now. They've gone in and they've looked at it and they said, you know what, we'd like to try to be an ISP in this game. Fantastic, I'll embrace that. What are we going to do? How do I help you? Let's identify some areas. Let's try to figure out a couple shovel-ready projects. Let's get a win on the books, right? So, what will happen is these three bodies will coordinate their efforts to where, if I have it my way, Ed, and I think it's the way that we're all agreeing that will happen, is all these projects will come into a funnel, basically, and that funnel will have basically a vetting tool to it that will say, are your variables near correct, based on what we see for cost of construction, all those kind of things, timing, funding, those kind of things. Are they correct? And if they are, good. Now they get into this other bundle, and I talked to some folks I think that you introduced me to yesterday at the Alpha Ledger folks out in Poulsbo. But we talk about, in that next stage, where do we find the funds? Which funds are we going to use? Is this set up to be good into the PWB thing? Is it set up to be good under CURB? Is it set up to be embraced by the broadband office? Or does it have the potential to go out to the federal area and get USDA money so we can bring money in from out of state? So then we'll identify that based on some of the criteria that this tool will allow us to say. It'll say, this one will score well on USDA. Well, in that case, I want to take that one to USDA. I want to support it with state matching funds, and I want to make certain that we get some success at that level. We'll have a grant writer. We went through a successful RFP. We've got a grant writer partner right now with the state that has tremendous success going and getting federal money, writes monster narratives. So we'll take that, we'll go and start to shape things that way, and that's the way we'll do it. And Ed, you couldn't be more correct on the supply side challenges. So one of the things we also can do as communities, if we want to think outside the box a little bit, is continue to put pressure on some of that federal legislation around, can we get continuation of deadlines for these funds? If you've got an end to one of our either any of our congressional folks, I think conversations around, hey, 12 to 24 is going to be a little bit aggressive, given the fact that we're going to be seeing some supply side issues probably 2 years out, which puts us in this build window of what, 12 months. We have the luxury of most of our state, we can kind of play around 12 months a year. There's a lot of states that, that window is a 4-month window to build, and that'll be a tremendous challenge for those states as well. So anything we can do to support that.
We almost need a sync board just dedicated to broadband, separate from the sync board we have right now. And since the PUDs, Lindsay, to partly address your question, will now have authority in the state to go directly to the feds, I don't know how we make sure we're all pulling in the same direction. I really think a sync board for broadband might be the answer.
Yeah, that federal money, Ed, that the PUDs will chase will primarily be FCC funds at the next round of potentially the RDOF. And when that happens, it'll happen probably a year from now or so, and there'll be billions of dollars available. And hopefully by that time, we've done good planning, we've got good projects, and we can start to put intelligent numbers on requests for projects is what I'm hoping.
Thank you. I want to be respectful of your time this morning, Russ. And we do have one more hand raised. So I would like Randy to have an opportunity to ask his question or make his comment. And then we really do appreciate your time and enthusiasm and energy and information this morning.
Thanks, Beck. Thank you.
Hey, Russ, I'll just make it quick for you. Number one, I sent you over on the chat my telephone number. I hope you will write it down. I'd love to actually meet with you when you're out here in Shelton. I'll take you out to lunch. My treat.
I'm here. Let's go.
Okay. We could do it today. Actually, I have to. Actually, you want to go to an interview with the Mason County Journal because they're going to be talking about broadband.
I've got a kindergarten graduation I have to attend, unfortunately, but I will take a rain check, Randy, and I'm writing a number down, so I will be in touch for sure.
Yes, please. And if you have an extra second. Can you touch on the new thing I'm being contacted about? I'm about to have a meeting with the school districts in regards to a new type of way of delivering hotspots where instead of being 300 feet like the PUDs and the stuff are putting out, they think they have a model where they can do a mile or several miles with the new technology. Do you know anything about that yet? This is brand spanking new. I literally am just going into a meeting with them in the next week or two.
Yeah, Randy, as you do that, I appreciate an audience with that group as well. I mean, there's a number of technologies that can do that. Obviously, this sounds like it's going to be an LTE type technology, maybe more of a cellular type technology off of schools. Given this Emergency Connect Fund, the ECF that's coming out from the FCC, all the acronyms, I think there's going to be an opportunity to extend the networks of the schools out to students, and they're going to be able to fund that. I would anticipate that we're going to see small cell development on schools that will allow for those types of these types of devices to get better service by the schools and then leverage the hotspot technology. I would guess that's what it is, but I built networks too off of schools and libraries back in the day, and we used fixed wireless. So, that's another tool that you can have in your toolbox.
Well, from what I understand, they're looking at actually putting it out into the locations. For example, this area out in the Tahuya Valley where they have the fiber optics.
Yep.
And actually placing it off of there. I didn't know they had the ability to be an end user, but I'll find out more about that. If you don't mind, you have my phone number. If you could text me yours, I will make sure that we get you into this when I'm invited. I think it would be, I'm being invited in hopes of being able to find funding for them that we may have through our monies. If we can get more, I love being the test case. It doesn't bother me one little bit. You direct, I follow. You just get my people the broadband that they need. You'll increase my bottom line on my value for my properties and everything else.
Well, I live in rural Mason County out here in Dayton Trails area, and I'm fortunate to have a local incumbent that has stretched their network based on leveraging USDA money. Yeah. And I've got fiber to the barn out here. I've got acres, got horses, they got good connectivity out there, so I'm very fortunate in that, but it took some creative thinking. We also have the PUD out here. Mason's doing a great job doing that. So I'm all about it, Randy. Let's sit down and have those conversations. I'll text you and certainly excited to hear if there's compelling technology. And don't forget, so the ECF, the Emergency Connectivity Fund that's coming out through the FCC, $7.5 billion for these efforts. 7.5 billion available open now for business. So if we have a little project here that we might be able to prove concept on, potentially we can go and chase that fund. And my grant writer is prolific at chasing that money. So we'll make that happen. So let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Really appreciate, again, your time, your energy, and the value that you brought to our organization today. Much appreciated. And in respect to your time, we will move on to our next agenda item.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.